All right. Thank you for joining us today. We know that you guys are in your busy time of years. You're all preparing for graduation, which is probably right around the corner. So again, we appreciate any time you spend with us. And welcome to our monthly Gray Decision Intelligence Demand for Higher Education Programs. A couple of housekeeping items that we all like to go for. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. That way other attendees can upvote your questions. We will try to get them in the order they're asked, as well as the slide that they are on. If you have any comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. Once again, I'm going to turn it over to our host and founder, Robert Atkins.
Thanks very much, Ned. And again, thanks to all of you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules. This is an action-packed presentation. We've got lots of information for you, both at the national and the more local level for several states. So hang in there. Here we go. We'll start off with a little bit of discussion about what a program evaluation system is and why you need it. Then we'll turn to student demand and share with you what's going on that front with Google enrollment and non-degree courses. And then we'll talk about national employment indicators, and we'll take a look at local matters in Georgia, Montana, and Virginia. And finally, we'll wrap it up. First of all, for those of you who haven't been with Gray before, a moment on what an academic program evaluation system is and its purpose. It's here to enable growth and sustainable financials. To do that, the first thing you need to look at is mission and make sure that the programs you offer are aligned with that mission. And remember, as we go through the rest of it, that a program that may not make money or be well aligned with the market, if it's critical to your mission, is still a program you may choose to support. Now, of course, the next thing is it aligned with your academic focus and level of performance? So that might be anything from you're an engineering school or humanities college, and it may be that you have to get nurses through the NCLEX. Whatever those academic standards are, the programs need to be consistent with those standards. Then you get to issues like markets. And do students want this program? Do employers seek out these graduates? How hard is the competition in that individual market? And that, in turn, drives margins. And we don't do margins in order for you to figure out how to be for-profit institutions. We know almost all of you are not. But you need enough margin from high-performing programs to fund the programs that are mission-critical but can't stand on their own 2 feet financially. Now, I wish I could tell you there was an algorithm that could make your program decisions for you, but that's not the case. You need the right people involved in the right process or processes in order to evaluate programs and manage them on an ongoing basis. There is no substitute yet for human judgment, but we're getting there. We have recently enabled or created, using AI and machine learning, the ability to predict how many students are likely to enroll in an academic program. Now, that could be the number of students that we would estimate should be enrolling in an existing program. And the difference between that and the actual might be an opportunity, for example, for you to grow if you find your program is half as big as the prediction. But perhaps more importantly, it's the ability to predict how big a new program is likely to be if you offer it. And we tie that right into pro forma financials. So in a few minutes, you can go from a program idea to full-fledged 5-year financial estimates for that program. So that gets you a little bit further down the pipe in terms of automating the process. But in full disclosure, you still need the right people looking at those numbers in the right process in order for program evaluation to be effective at your institution. Now, why bother? Well, we believe well-informed program evaluation increases revenue. It's not about picking new programs. It's about picking the right new programs, the best new programs. And you need really good, robust data in order to do that. It's also about investing in the right programs to grow. As you understand program economics or margins, you can streamline your costs without disrupting the entire campus and shutting down dozens of programs. You can identify under-enrolled courses and sections, you can reduce faculty course loads, and you can reinvest in growth. And you can sustain programs that are more streamlined, therefore less expensive to operate, even if they're not contribution positive. You can reduce the amount that they cost. Now, sadly, there really is no way to improve or reduce cost in higher ed without cutting people. And that is just reality, and it's unfortunate. But we can minimize that. We can do it in a way that's not disruptive to the campus or to the academic integrity of the institution if we're smart. And we don't kind of go around doing what I call dumb cuts, saying I'm going to cut everything that has every program that has fewer than 4 students in it, when in fact many of those programs are contribution positive. So at a minimum, we can make the cost cuts more effective, less disruptive. So let's turn to student demand and understand what's going on there. And spoiler alert, it's a good trend. So this whole pressure on cost reduction, we're beginning to see at the associates and certificate level some positive signs that the worst is over in terms of enrollment, at least for now. So let me explain how to read these charts. The gray bars are 2021, the light blue bars are 2022, and the darker blue bars are 2023. And then the one we're all interested in, the darkest blue or almost black color there, is 2024. So what is going on with Google search volumes, or Google as I call it, gray Google search volumes? It's down 5%, which is disappointing. Search volumes have been up for the prior 6 or 8 months. So to see a decline is a little bit worrisome. 1 month generally isn't too meaningful in this data, so I hope it doesn't recur. We're still staying above 20 million searches, which is very good relative to 2021, and kind of above the water level, in line with October, November, December in 2023. So it's not a terrible number, but I wish it were going up, not down year over year. Importantly, it is going up slightly month over month. So March is a little bit ahead of February. One of the reasons the searches are going up is people are spending more money on them. So we're up 10% in the cost of a search on Google. Actually, 9.2% is the correct number in the cost of a search on Google. That's quite a jump in a single month. We haven't been above $16 in a cost per click in the history of this data set. So it's getting more expensive out there to attract students. Now, let's take a look at this by program and find the fastest growing programs. And a couple of thoughts on this, by the way. I would never start a program based on a fast 1 month of growth. Google search volumes are much too volatile for that. But if I'm starting to think about where I want to put some marketing money for a program that I already have, jumping on a trend can be very productive and taking advantage of things that people are really actively looking for right now. So as I say, it's not the basis for a long-term decision, but it could be the basis for a tactical decision about where to invest some marketing money in the short term. And we can see here that this is just dominated by healthcare. 6 of our top 10 programs are health programs. They include dental hygiene, MRI tech, rad tech, surge tech, phlebotomy, and ultrasound tech. So practically anything to do with healthcare is up, and it's up big. In addition, we have a couple of CTE programs, and I've started to see aircraft a few times now. So I'm beginning to have some confidence that that's a real thing. Not one that I recall seeing previously, but in the last few months, aircraft technician programs are going up and going up pretty fast. I'm very optimistic about this field. There is a nationwide shortage of aircraft maintenance techs. So there are major airlines who are willing to invest in this. There are software providers who will give you the software. I believe it was for the European Airbus. One of our clients got the full maintenance software suite from them for free in order to train mechanics on it. So there's a big shortage there. I don't think it's quite as big a shortage in HVAC, but it's too is up 28%. And then we have a couple of random entries, electrical engineering and airline flight attendant. But all these programs are up over 25%, which is a pretty healthy growth rate. Now let's turn to enrollment and see what's happening there. So if you think about what we're doing, we're moving through time from Google looking forward at what people want. Now we're going to look at enrollment, which is what people want right now, or what they've chosen already. And my headline on this page is yay. We're finally looking at numbers that are up both at the associate new fall enrollment for certificates. Gosh, I presented this for a long time, having to present downward trending numbers. So I have to tell you, it's really exciting for me to be able to see growth, in particular for the community colleges. In 2020 to 21, we're up 7%, 22 up 6%, 2023, we're up another 6% at the certificate level. Very promising numbers. 2022 up 3%, 2023 up another 3% in fall enrollment at the associates level. So it looks like the long decline in enrollment in community colleges may be coming to a close, not a moment too soon.
Bob, quick question. Do we have the zip codes for these programs?
We do. I don't have them offhand, but we definitely do have them. If someone would like, I'm trying to think. Yeah, we could probably get them to you right away. And if you have our systems, if you search on these terms, you'll pull up the zip codes. Just use the words instead of a zip in the selections. So what's going on in new enrollment? What's growing fast and what's creeping up? Computer and information sciences and information technology over the last 5 years have grown 11% annually. So that's a pretty impressive amount of growth in those two. I will come to some other computer-related ones that are growing quickly in a moment. Then we have health, but here, interestingly enough, only one is up in our top 10 from health, and that's health information medical records tech. Career and technical education has done very well over the last 5 years. Auto body collision and repair tech up 7%, welding up 4%. Here's auto mechanics up 4%, cosmetology up 2%, and HVAC maintenance tech up 2%. So those are the programs that have very strong enrollment. There are two others in our random category of other, real estate and entrepreneurship, both up over 3%. At the associate level, it's a very different picture. Number one by far is cybersecurity information assurance. That's been a big program for a while, and it's a big program that continues to grow. Diagnostic medical sonography is up 11%. We've got another healthcare program, RadTech, up 3%, and kinesiology up 3%. Then we've got career and technical education, only one entry this time, with electrician. And we have a few other programs, performing arts, up 8%. History, yay, my program, up 5%. Marketing and marketing management, up 4%. So we've got a group of programs here that have done pretty well over the last 5 years, but nothing compares to cybersecurity. So if you're not in that space, I don't believe that's run out yet. We continue to have cyber problems across the country and internationally as well. So and that's a field that's only going to grow for the foreseeable future. Now let's shift gears a little bit and look at non-degree courses. And in particular, we're going to look at Coursera. Now, why do we look at these? This is our best insight into the kinds of things where you could offer a certificate and expect to see substantial enrollment. So all of these are just individual courses that are offered on Coursera, and the volume here is just staggering. In March, Coursera added 1.18 million learners, just an enormous number. So these are all people who are looking for a course in a particular area. The general topic areas are not too surprising. We've got a couple of computing courses, software development, with over 8 million people that have subscribed just over this time period. And I'm sorry, when I tell you the time, say 8 million people, that is not 8 million people who enrolled in March. That is 8 million people who've enrolled in this program since its inception. So keep that in mind. That could be 5 or 10 years. Machine learning, 5.6 million, and algorithms, 4 million. We've got a lot of others here: personal development, leadership and management, business essentials, music and art, and learning English. And then finally, some computing specifically. I covered that already, software and web development. So I think the real new thing here, if you look back over the last few years, it's been emerging, is data analytics, machine learning, and algorithms. And really what we're talking about is the underpinnings of AI in many cases, just red hot. Certificates on Coursera, these are the kinds of things that you could offer as a certificate program, are very tightly aligned with the skill outcomes that employers want. Here we can see Human Resource Associate Certificate. The skill outcomes that they claim on Coursera are employee relations, training and development, performance management, recruitment, and compliance strategy. And we look at the top skills from our skills database, and they align almost perfectly. We've got performance management, employee engagement, which I would call employee relations as well, career development, compliance strategy, and recruitment strategy. So there tends to be a pretty tight relationship between what Coursera offers and the top skills required by the marketplace. So let's flip that around for a second and say, okay, what can you do with that? Well, right now you can go on Coursera and you can look in your area and you can see the volume of students that have enrolled in a program over time. You see that little red circle there, 39,500 already enrolled. And you can see the specific skills they're teaching. This is a way for you to think of it as market research. Very quickly go in, look on Coursera, and see what people are looking for, what skills they want to develop. Now let's turn to national employment and see who's hiring whom. First of all, if you think about the relationship between academic programs on one side, whether that's certificates or associates programs, and jobs on the other, or occupations, there's this prevalent concept that there's some direct linkage between those two things. That the reality is there's this huge cloud in between what programs are taught and what people go to do at work. What do I mean by that? Well, this is a good example. So we're talking about sociology. And if you thought there were sort of straight lines you could draw between a program and jobs, you'd look at the National Center for Education Statistics, or NCES crosswalk. And you'd find they'd say there are 4 or 5 things that a sociology major is prepared to do. Managers, all other, social science research assistants, sociologists, and sociology teachers post-secondary. And to give you the headline on that, if you took all those together, not a whole lot of jobs, and none of them are particularly well paid. If that were true, you could very easily tell your sociology grads that, you know, life is bleak after graduation. That's not particularly correct, though. We have data on over 10,000 people who've graduated with an associate in sociology. And what we find is that they go into not 5, but 660 occupations in over 143 industries. So this classical NCES crosswalk, which unfortunately permeates most labor market databases, including several of our competitors, is fundamentally incorrect. And it's not incorrect by a little bit. I don't mind in this kind of work if you're off by 10%. I mean, realistically, the data isn't that precise. But when I have to multiply by 100 to even get close to the correct answer, that's way off. That's not okay. We've done a whole bunch of work using the American Community Survey and then our database on graduates to figure out what people really do. And then we've adjusted our crosswalks. So when you look at them and say, what can my graduates do? You get information about what people really do, not what the National Center for Education says they should do. And by the way, the National Center for Education Statistics is also happy to tell you that their crosswalk, and I'm going to quote them here, is not based on empirical data. So they know that and they're actually working on it. But unfortunately, it ripples through all sorts of databases. So anyway, what do people really do? Well, they become general and operations managers, not too shabby. Executive admin assistants, managers come other, project management specialists, customer service representatives, sales reps, human resource managers, architectural and engineering managers, sales managers, and social and community service managers. Almost none of those are actually on the list of things NCES says you should do. So what is happening with jobs? Overall, job postings declined 3% a year. So one could look at that and be concerned. And in fact, if you were looking for a job, you should be. It's a very tight market out there. People are having trouble now, especially highly skilled people are having trouble getting jobs. Very upside down from how we looked at the world a few years ago. If you go on Glassdoor, where there's a good smattering of consultants and analysts, you'll find that there's a lot of anxiety about their jobs now. And as I say, it's kind of the inverse of what we had really for the last 20 years, where it was low-skilled workers who were stressed about staying employed. That could change overnight with interest rates if it hits construction, for example. But right now, jobs are down a little bit, and my impression is they're down more strongly at the high end than the low end. Which occupations added the most jobs over? Oh, I should say one other thing. This is not bad for higher education. If you look at all 50 states, it's not a tight trend, but as we've looked at it over time as well, as job postings drop and as the unemployment rate increases, more people go to school. So for higher education, this downward trend in jobs is actually a positive. If people can't find work, they tend to go back to college. So I think that may be part of what's underpinning the growth in enrollment is this, well, really from 2022, very steep fall off coming out of COVID when we had that boom that was 2022, back to more normal levels and now a decline from there. So it's making it a little bit easier for people to decide to go to school rather than take a job. As I mentioned, what's hot and what's not, we still need a lot of truck drivers. I think we all know this is going to be automated, but when it gets automated, who knows? And when the regulators allow those trucks to drive unassisted without a human in them down the road, I'm not sure when that's really going to happen. There are a few out there now in certain states, but I think that's going to be slower coming, not because the technology is not there, although there are issues with the technology, but because regulators are going to step in, as all of us are afraid of that semi that's going by that has nobody in it. Nursing assistants, number 2, and we've got 4 from healthcare here, home and health personal care aides, psychiatric techs, and licensed practical nurses. And then a pretty random group of other occupations that are growing: food service managers, software developers, machinists, real estate agents, and sales reps in wholesale manufacturing. What skills are people looking for? Safety standards, applied behavior analysis, interestingly enough, restaurant management, point of sale, very similar, related to restaurant management, companionship, inventory management, event planning, on-the-job training, Groovy, and safety and food sanitation. Food and safety sanitation, excuse me. Now, those of you from my era, back when people used the word Groovy, may wonder what the heck Groovy is doing on a list of skills. Well, honestly, we wondered too. But it turns out Groovy is a software language. It's similar to Python, and much the way Python caught up with R and other coding languages, perhaps Groovy is the next one to come along. We'll see. What skills? Let's take machinist now off that list and look at what a machinist needs to know in order to increase their pay. So if they have pre-production skills, that are going to make about $81,250. Refining bumps it up a little bit. Change request bumps it up a little bit more. Performance management, no change. Vericut, whatever the devil that is, and Rotorcraft, another little bump up. Safety audits. Now we're getting a significant bump. I think what we're seeing is we're transitioning to managerial skills that a machinist could develop. Analytics, now we see a really big jump. Jira, that's a software package, and business process, and now that machinist is making well over $100,000 a year. Now, one of the questions we get asked is, okay, I'm thinking about this program. How can I validate it? So for example, somebody tells me AI skills are in demand, how can I check? Inside our database, we keep track of skills, and you can do a keyword search on a skill and see the jobs. Well, first of all, how many people are looking for that particular skill, in this case, AI, and you can see that over time, and you can see we've got a nice upward trend going here in 2024. And then we come to highest job posting volumes. You can see the jobs that require that, and what they specifically are. Whether it's a digital business analyst or sales development analyst. Now, in addition to that, you can go in for these individual occupations now, or job postings. So, okay, what's the growth rate in those job postings as well? So across those 3 things, you can get a very good understanding of what the jobs are, what the skills are, and how those skills are growing around something like AI or really any other topic you want. The beauty here is the ability to search for those individual keywords across our entire database of job postings, which at this point is well over 60 million. Now let's take a look at the more local markets. And we do this just to highlight that local markets really are different from national. I don't know, a long time ago, before I started doing work like this, I always thought, that the US was sort of one country and it was very similar from place to place. It was naive then, and I now know it's really wrong. And each state, each county, really, even within a state, and sometimes smaller geographies than that, can be very, very different one from another. So let's start with Georgia. Here we see really good upticks in employment, up 10% for associates programs, up 15% in 2023. 2022, US, you recall, was up 3 and up 3 for those 2 years. So Georgia's running way ahead of the rest of the country. in associate employment growth. Now, if we look at that by program, what we're seeing here on the bottom, or x-axis, is the U.S. growth rate in enrollment, and on the y-axis is the Georgia growth rate. So first thing to notice is that none of the programs we have here in Georgia are below zero in terms of growth. So they're all growing. That's not true for the US. If I'm over here on the left-hand side, I've got a program that's growing in Georgia, but shrinking in the US. Business operations support's a good example, down over 10% nationally, but up over 10% in Georgia. Medical records tech up in Georgia almost 5%, down nationally by 8%. Bookkeeping slightly up in Georgia, down 5% nationally. And you can see how it trends. We've got a bunch of things here that were about zero nationally that are growing 5% or more in Georgia. Those are culinary arts, computer programming, and auto tech. Then we've got rad tech here. It's growing in both markets. Marketing management growing in both markets. And here's something that's growing almost equally in both markets, cybersecurity. So the key takeaways are, number one, focus where the growth is. But number two, you really do need your local market information in order to make informed decisions. Your market, like Georgia, can be very, very different from national averages. What's going on with job postings in Georgia? Well, they're down 6%. So they're a little bit faster decline than we had in the national market, if I recall correctly. That, by the way, may be why enrollment is up so sharply in Georgia. Again, it's not really a consistent trend across the country where, wherever jobs are down, enrollment's up, but they're pretty well connected when you look at the national trends. We look at Georgia jobs and what's growing. Again, we've got truck drivers at the top, nursing assistants, general and operations manager, food service managers. One thing I'll highlight here, we've seen a couple times, anything to do with psychiatry, treatment of mental illness has been growing. We see it across our list consistently. I've got another healthcare here with light practical nurses. And then just really a random set of things, sales reps, light truck drivers, elementary school teachers, and software developers, all up in Georgia. Fastest growing skills looks very similar to our national one, actually. Safety standards is at the top, point of sale was up there. But applied behavior analysis makes it here in Georgia, didn't make our other list. Life support, data collection, communicable diseases, intervention plans, cultural diversity, patient safety, and evidence-based practice. A few healthcares here, but a very different list than we had. We looked at the national skill data. In certs, these tend to be somewhat consistent across areas because they're usually required in order to practice. So, if you want to go into a government job that requires security, you got to have a security clearance. If you want to be a nurse, you've got to get a license. So a nurse practitioner similarly. So you're going to tend to see in these certifications a high representation of health because fortunately for all of us, in order to practice in healthcare, you generally need to have some evidence that you know what you're doing. Not always the case in other professions. And you can see here, board certified analyst, that's a psychiatric position. And again, I think we're seeing quite a bit of interest and growth in anything to do with psychiatric care. Now, let's go a little further north and west, up to Montana. One place in the world that has worse weather than Boston. New fall enrollment was declined in 2022, and actually quite a bit, down 6%, but it rebounding there as well, up 5% in 2023. And as you recall, up both in 2022 and 23 nationally. Job postings here were down 9%, so a little bit faster than national, a little bit faster than Atlanta. Now, one would hope or expect that if it's down 9%, we're going to see an increase in enrollment. Let me just jump ahead. Nope, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it did or didn't. Fastest growing occupations here, again, truck drivers. We've got sales reps, real estate agents, nurse assistants, community and food social specialists, first line supervisors, tellers, firefighters, bill and account collectors, and diagnostic medical sonographers. So outside of trucking and sales, we've got a very different list here in Montana in terms of jobs. Now, here's the company with the highest number of job postings. And I have to admit, I did not look up what Town Pump does, but I just don't know. So that's a mystery for all of you. If anybody wants to Google it while we're talking, You can find out who has the most job postings in Montana by Googling Town Pump. The state of Montana is the second largest in terms of job postings. And then you can see Albertsons, a grocery chain, Logan Health, hospitals, Intermountain Healthcare, another grocery chain, and we got Montana State University in that top 10 or 15. So a lot of healthcare here, and then a couple of supermarkets. And you can see the wide range of salaries over here on the left, from almost $60,000 at Logan Health to $31,000 at Town Pump. Let's take a quick look at Virginia, see what's going on there. They're stumbling a little bit. New fall enrollment in Virginia is actually down 5% in 2023. It was up 6% in 2022. So it's an unfortunate turnaround and very different than Montana or the national numbers. Job postings in the state are down. So here's a case where enrollment is declining even though job postings are down. So that's a double negative, which is difficult to deal with and not pleasant for either colleges or the local economy. As we look at within counties here, just to highlight how different it can be, not just between states, but between counties, you've got very few things here that overlap, the ones that are in black, and you'll note out of 10 of the fastest growing occupations, only 2 of them are in common between the 2 counties. And that's nursing assistants. We're number 1 in Prince William County, number 5 or 6 over here in Virginia Beach, and software developers who come in at number 6, in Prince William County, number 1 in Virginia Beach. So even just across a few miles from one another, you can have a very different local economy with very different volumes of job postings by occupation. How do I validate the demand for a skill, specifically adaptability? You can look at the job posting volumes for jobs that require adaptability, and there are a lot. And then we can break that down to the individual job postings and job titles that require that over here on the right-hand side, with an operations coach being number 1. Not surprisingly, clinical social workers, a high need for adaptability, or frequently in job postings, almost a high number of them will request adaptability. Mental health counselor, that makes sense. Sales managers, sales representatives, yep. You have to be willing to adapt to whatever your customers happen to be up to that day. And you can see the rest of the list down to probably the job that requires the most adaptability, I think, is administrative assistants. There are relatively few jobs, but I can't think of anything where from 1 minute to the next, your entire agenda for the day could change. So depending on what's going on, what your all the clients you serve may need, and I say clients, I mean bosses really. So a lot of adaptability needed in many jobs. Here are the ones that happen to have the highest number of job postings. So let me summarize for you. In March, U.S. job postings fell 3% year over year. In Georgia, Montana, Virginia, they fell 6 to 9%. That was not entirely a bad thing. Don't tell anybody outside of higher ed, but that did contribute, I believe, to an increase in certificate enrollments up 6% and associate enrollment, which went up 3%. In March, however, Google searches for academic programs fell 5%, which is a worrisome change. I think if the employment picture continues to get more difficult, that we will see a sustained interest in higher ed, but that is a warning shot when you see Google searches start to decline. Searches for some programs nonetheless went up at double-digit rates. Dental hygiene in particular grew 74%. It is getting more expensive out there to recruit students. Google cost per click rose 10%. Over the last 5 years, a few programs stand out for their growth, and I believe actually each of these is likely to continue to grow over the next 5 years. New enrollment in computer and information sciences up 11% at the certificate level over annually for 5 years. New enrollment in cybersecurity, associates programs has grown 19% annually for the last 5 years. Well, I mean, it is record-setting growth. There's nothing close to that in our data. Job postings, including the keyword artificial intelligence, not surprising, they grew 146% year over year. And last but not least, remember a couple of things. Results vary by state and county, so you do need data for the specific market you serve. We're happy to provide that. In our systems, we customize the data for you. So you can look at the particular area your students come from. You may want to choose a wider area than that. You can have several of those definitions in your systems. So you can look at your local market, you can look at a broader market, your state, region, and the country, all in the same system, all with access within a click or two. And by the way, for everybody, Town Pump is convenience stores and travel in Montana. So that's what they're up to, not pumping beer. So let's see. Anything else in terms of questions? I'm happy to take them. That's the end of my formal presentation. I will say there are lots of other resources you can get from Gray. We have published a book on how to do program evaluation. It's available on Amazon. If you're going to buy a bunch, call us up. We might send some to you for free as well. Not all of them, but some of them. We have a course for those of you who want to go a deep dive in program evaluation offered through Baypath. We have webinars every month like this one for community colleges and one for four-year colleges. And then finally, there's a podcast we have called Grow, Grow, Grow. And you might guess what the topic is, but it is how to grow a higher education institution. Personally, I think all the negative news we've heard about declining populations, the value of college, student debt, and all that sort of thing, we can all, if you will, curl up and die and hope for a new world, or we can set out on a path to grow our institutions. I don't think despair just isn't a strategy. And I really believe that there are opportunities to grow every kind of institution you can imagine. I was on the phone recently with the president of a college in Presque Isle, Maine, and he's more than double the size of that school. Presque Isle, Maine is exactly in the middle of nowhere. It's northeast Maine. It's practically in Canada. It's a many-hour drive from Boston or even Bangor. So it's way out in the middle of nowhere. It was very small, smallest college in the Maine system. And now it's one of the top 3 colleges in the Maine system. So if they can do it there, you really can do it anywhere. But it does require a commitment to growth and some innovation. And that's what that webinar is all about. And it's not me talking. It's actually interviewing presidents of colleges who've achieved growth across a wide range of different colleges, from community colleges to 4 years and beyond.